the New York Yankees are 2 wins away from hosting the American League wildcard game. Just 2. And they might only need 1 win and get help from other teams. But the Yankees have put themselves in a position that I did not see happening at all. Certainly if we date back to the end of the Cleveland series. Since then, the Yankees have won 8 out of 9. They swept Texas, which, okay, at the time, you did what you had to. But then you go to Boston, sweep Boston, then you go to Toronto and win 2 out of 3. Going 5-1 in the Red Sox and Blue Jays series was absolutely vital. Not only that, the Red Sox lost 2 out of 3 to the Orioles. I never would have expected that to happen. Understandably so, it was in Baltimore, but you would have figured, all right, like the Red Sox at a minimum would win 2 out of 3. They actually lost the series. So as the standings are currently, it's the Yankees up by 2 games on the Red Sox and the Mariners, who have kind of quietly made this charge. And then the Blue Jays are 3 games behind the Yankees. And this is all very important because, again, the Yankees play the Rays the last weekend of the season. Now, granted, the Rays have locked up that number 1 spot in the American League, so they don't have anything to play for from that perspective, but that they'd like to knock out the Yankees if at all possible. But the Yankees are in a really good spot, but still work to be done. Nothing has been clinched yet, but like I said, all it takes is just 2 wins and nothing else matters, and the Yankees will be home for that wild card game. And even if they win just 1 game, that could still hold true. And if they win 1 game, then there's at least a decent shot that they would at least clinch a playoff spot. Now, if you get swept, then things get dicey. So that's where, as a Yankee fan, you should definitely be very excited, but there is still some work to be done. But I never could have envisioned them being in such a good spot right here. I thought for sure that if the Yankees got in, that based on Boston's easy schedule, that Boston would be hosting this ball game. And that still might be the case when it's all said and done. But again, it's hard to not be happy for this team. And it seems like when their backs are against the wall, they respond time and time again. And just, a few players and a few, I guess if we go sort of segment by segment, Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton are just really carrying this team. And it is impressive how they have, stayed on the field as well. So, and that those 2 things kind of go hand in hand, where obviously with good health leads to good results. But I don't think it can be understated just how important these 2 guys have been, where, I think in certainly like the last 2 seasons, at least regular season wise, they had been hurt quite a bit. And it was more guys like DJ LeMahieu, certainly Gleyber Torres in 2019, different, sort of 2019 was like the next man up Yankees, and, Gio Urshela has done good things, and I could go on and on. But this year, Judge and Stanton have by far been the 2 best, most clutch, most important players on this team. And that would again be true in this series. Also, what is extremely important is the bullpen is really coming back around. And I think it's no coincidence that getting Michael King back has been so important, as well as Luis Severino. Also, Jonathan Loaisiga would return in this series. And, obviously the acquisition of Clay Holmes. We haven't even seen Domingo Germán yet since he's been activated. I think he's been activated for about a week, but he hasn't appeared in a game yet. Also, Aroldis Chapman and Chad Green, who I think, every Yankee fan would admit, and me too, that you're nervous when they're in there. They have also been pitching well lately. Combine that with Wandy Peralta getting some clutch outs here and there, and you have yourself now a pretty deep bullpen. And keep in mind, Zach Britton. Like Zach Britton's not even a part of this, and it was a completely disaster of a season for him. But my point is that you've had some injuries along the way as well. Like Darren O'Day was supposed to be a big part of this pen. You traded away Luis Sessa, who's actually been good with the Reds as well. But even with that all being said, this bullpen is pretty damn deep. And Andrew Heaney is now no longer on the roster, which everyone is thrilled about. Albert Abreu is back, which I think is good depth. And we'll see how the playoff roster, if they get there, shakes out. But let's jump into the series. So it would be Jameson Taillon. Speaking of arms that have reappeared, Jameson Taillon against Hyun-Shin Ryu, and it is for Ryu. It has not been a good season for Toronto. He has definitely underperformed. Good pitcher with the Dodgers, especially late in his Dodger career, and Ryu, I believe, was pretty good last year in the abbreviated season for Toronto, but this year he hasn't been quite right. And Taillon in this one ends up re-injuring the ankle that sent him on the IL in the first place. He has not actually been placed on the injured list. They're still trying to hold out hope that maybe he can be useful. And you know what? I'm fine with that. The more arms, the better. It doesn't look good for Taillon, but just the fact that they haven't placed him on the IL yet, I think speaks to something, and that maybe he can be he can contribute in this run. But Taillon would only go 2 1/3 innings, but he only had 1 run, and that was key. So it ended up kind of being a Taillon-Michael King combination, which would end up going 5 innings, 2 runs, and I think you'll take that all day long. King really did a good job of sort of stabilizing the game and keeping it where it was. But, in this one, it would be Toronto that would take the lead as George Springer would walk. Then, 4-pitch walk to start out the game. Not good for Taillon. And then he would steal second the next batter. And Toronto, there was a lot of steals for Toronto this series, whether that be against Gary Sanchez in this one, or Kyle Higashioka in the next 2 games. And that's something that the Yankees are going to have to work on. I mean, every little thing is important. And I feel like it was a rough series for the catchers. And, I'll say it now. Like, it's to the point again where Gary Sanchez, you don't really want him starting. And not that Kyle Higashioka is anything amazing, because he's not. But I think the way that it lays out with sort of Cole, where Higashioka catches Cole and Kluber, and then Sanchez catches the others, I think it kind of just works itself out. I mean, Sanchez certainly does not deserve 100% starting time. No way. So Springer gets that steal. And then with 2 outs, Bo fucking Bichette absolutely destroys the Yankees. Don't get me wrong, Bo Bichette's a very good player, but he really, really owns the Yankees. I mean, especially this year. And I want to say, since he's been in the league, Bichette has just been a thorn in the Yankees' side, and he was a player. Whereas Vlad Guerrero was honestly held mostly in check, Bichette, for example, was not held in check at all. He was unbelievably good. So Bichette gets that RBI single to make it 1-0, and then he actually steals second, but they would avoid further trouble. So it's 1-0 Toronto at that point. Top of the third, who ties it up? Solo shot by Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, in Game 1 and Game 3 of the series, put the team on his back. He now has 39 home runs this year. He's approaching 100 RBIs. I want to say he has 97, I believe. 97 RBIs for Judge. So he's closing in on 40 homers and 100 RBIs. And I really think that Aaron Judge, there is a decent chance that he will be sort of, so it's Ohtani and Guerrero. I think Judge might be number 3 in terms of the MVP order in the American League. So the Yankees tied up with that Judge homer. Then in the bottom of the 4th, though, and this is off Michael King, it would be a leadoff single by that guy again, Bo Bichette, and eventually he gets the 3rd with 2 outs. And it would be a Corey Dickerson RBI double. And I felt like Corey Dickerson had a really good series. I mean, even when he wasn't getting hits, it was hard outs. And Corey Dickerson, who was a trade acquisition by Toronto at the deadline, really made his presence felt in this series, and it was never fun when he was up there. So that made it 2-1 Toronto, but give the Yankees credit, and I felt like Game 1 and Game 3 of the series were very similar, but the main theme of the whole series was that the Yankees were coming back the whole time. They showed fight. They showed grit. They, it didn't matter what the score was. They either were going to come back or they were going to tack on more. Like, they didn't just stop. I mean, this was just really just an impressive series from the Yankees. And you could really see just the gumption that they showed. So top of the fifth, it would be Gio Urshela with one out that would get a single. And Gio has been turning it around at the plate. Him and Glaber. Gio and Glaber have both been really turning it around, and it's good to see. So Gio would single, and then LeMahieu walks. So it's first and second, one out, and it's a big RBI single for Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo really, he'd have a couple of big hits in this series. He has been, nothing spectacular. Certainly very, very steady at first base, which is great defensively. But, I think he would admit that he could do more on the offensive side. But in this series, there was some signs of life there. And this was a big RBI single. Good piece of hitting by Rizzo to tie it up. So Ryu's out of the game at this point. And they bring in Adam Simber. And first pitch swinging, Judge sack fly. That's what you got to do. In those sack fly situations, it's that first pitch. He does it. And LeMahieu scores, and it gives the Yankees a 3-2 lead. King then pitches a scoreless fifth. So the Yankees keep that lead. And then it would be Clay Holmes that comes on in the bottom of the sixth. And it was a bit of a sketchy inning for Holmes. Not the best series for Clay Holmes, and he's entitled to that. He's been unbelievably amazing. So, Holmes not pitching well, you totally understand it. But when it was all said and done, and Gary Sanchez seems like he's had a tough time catching Holmes. We've seen that too, I've noticed. But after it all, they didn't score. So it stays at 3-2. And then in the seventh, it would be Giancarlo Stanton, who again carries over from the Boston series and hits a fucking bomb to basically put the game out of reach. So Trevor Richards comes on for Toronto. It would be a one-out single for LeMahieu. Then with 2 outs, Judge walks. And then it would be a 3-run. He basically golfed it. It almost hit the ground. And it was a 3-run homer for Stanton. His 35th home run of the year. Just continuing not only just his good play, but his clutch play. And I felt like this was kind of the homer of the game. The big play of the game to make it 6-2. And then in the seventh, Chad Green would pitch a 1-2-3 seventh inning. And then in the eighth, Luis Severino would pitch a 1-2-3 inning. So really good job by Green and Sevy. And Sevy has really, you love the idea of him in this pen. He's been throwing strikes. He's been looking like the old Severino, and you hope that it continues. And then in the ninth, it would be Gio Urshela adding another run with a solo shot. Again, the game 1 and game 3 were very, very similar the more I look at this. So Gio makes it 7-2. And then it would be Wandy Peralta pitching a 1-2-3-9. So the bullpen did an excellent job. Michael King did well. Holmes gets into a little bit of trouble. And then Green, Severino, and Peralta lock it down. Toronto only had 3 hits in this game. The Yankees were the better team in this game, no question about it. They win at 7-2. Now let's talk about the disappointment in the series. And that's Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole really came up small in this one. And he hasn't really been that great lately. I will still say this. When it comes to Cole and him pitching in a wildcard game, especially if it's at Yankee Stadium, I would still expect that he would pitch well. But it's a bit of a wild card at this point. He's still capable of giving you that excellent gem performance. At the same time, I don't know. He is tough to predict. And, he certainly had that chance to win the Cy Young, and he blew it with this outing. Now, I guess you could also argue that Robbie Ray might have blown it with his the next night. But I think that, Cole, this was an unacceptable performance. Absolutely unacceptable that he would, in this situation, he almost cost the Yankees dearly. Luckily, the Yankees would recover the next game, but Cole was definitely, for me, the big negative of this series. And he got really hit very, very hard, especially early, extremely hard. And so, yeah, in the first, right away. And Jose Barrios pitched very well early. The Yankees would eventually get to Barrios by the end of his outing, but Barrios pitched really well as well. So it would be a Springer double and a Semien homer. And Semien's another guy like Bichette. Semien's just been good in general. Semien has like 44 home runs, which is insane. But like he has also killed the Yankees this season. So that would make it 2-0 just right away. And then in the second inning, it would be a 1-out double for Espinal and a 2-out single for George Springer. RBI single makes it 3-0. And then in the third, Bo Bichette homers. And he wouldn't stop there. But Bichette right there makes it 4-0. So it's 4-0 Toronto. And just, Cole would... At that point, Cole would basically stop the bleeding for the most part at that point. And in the fifth, the Yankees finally get going. Barrios actually had a perfect game to this point with 2 outs in the fifth, and then Torres doubles, Gio RBI single, Gardner RBI double. So right there, they went from nothing to like 2 runs and 3 straight hits. That makes it 4-2. But then here was a killer. And it would be in the 5th inning to start the inning. George Springer hits a fly ball to like shallow left. And Gio's going out and Gallo's coming in, and the ball drops in front of Gallo. Now, the quick thing on Gio is he probably should have had his glove down. Like, I think Gallo got confused, about maybe he thought Gio was going to catch it. Either way, Joey Gallo needs to make that play. He needs to. And Joey Gallo, he's just not all that likable. He just... he's a good guy. It's nothing to do with like his personality. It's just... you can tell that New York is definitely not for him. It clearly is not. He's a very streaky player. He's supposed to be a good fielder, and he's been making these terrible blunders. This was a very bad mistake by Gallo. Gallo needs to be aggressive and make that play. It was an easy play, and eventually what happens is that run would score. And if that didn't happen, there's a good chance that run doesn't score. So Vlad Guerrero gets an RBI double later in the inning, makes it 5-2. And that felt like a big run, but give the Yankees credit, they would eventually tie it up anyway. So as much as we can harp on that play, they did tie it up. So it would be a LeMahieu leadoff double. Then Rizzo grounds out to get him over, and then a sac fly by Judge. And first pitch swinging, Judge with the sac fly. He has just been so darn good. And that makes it 5-3. It cuts that deficit. Then the lefty Tim Mesa comes in and he hits Joey Gallo. And Joey Gallo would actually, he would be hurt on this play. And eventually he would leave the game later on. And not only would he leave the game, he actually wouldn't start the next game. He would eventually, I think he's going to be all right. He eventually would come in for defense, but he felt the effects on this one. And then Gleyber Torres gets an infield single, makes it first and second, no out. So then, unfortunately, Gio Urshela strikes out. And then Luke Voight pinch hits for Gardner. And Voight, it's been, like I said earlier in the season, and it eventually held true. It was a lost season for Luke Voight. It was a completely lost season for Voight, as what happens is he strikes out swinging, and he would, on the play, because it was a wild pitch that would actually move the runners over, which would be key. Voight runs the first, and he's limping, and he's hobbling, and he hurt his knee again. I guess knee inflammation. It's been a rough year for him. Obviously Rizzo being acquired, and Voight had his moments. There was a stretch there where Voight, after Rizzo came to the Yanks and Rizzo went on the COVID list, Voight really did well for that one point in time, but it has been a lost year for Luke Voight. And so he would actually be placed on the injured list. And do we see him again this season? I guess it's possible, but there's a very real likelihood that we've seen the last of Luke Voight this season. So now it's second and third, and I was happy that Kyle Higashioka was not pinch hit for. Higashioka is really good against lefties. I don't even know why they left Mesa in. Once Voight pinch hit for Gardner, I'm surprised they didn't bring Adam Simper in. And they leave Mesa in, and he does strike out Voight, and then they leave Mesa in for Higashioka. Very weird move by Charlie Montoyo. And it ends up backfiring for Montoyo as Higashioka gets a game-tying 2-run single. And I was happy that Higgy was in over Sanchez. I know a lot of people were surprised. I had the exact opposite approach, and I'm glad that Boone made this move to keep him in. So Higgy ties it up, makes it 5-5. And Tyler Wade would come in to take that Voight Gardner spot and play center field. And Jonathan Loaisiga comes in, and Loaisiga, he looks like he never left. Loaisiga, first appearance back, 1-2-3 inning. And unfortunately, you would have loved for him to pitch another inning, but since he just returned, they didn't want to push him. So I understand it. It's just unfortunate. And in the bottom of the eighth, Clay Holmes comes on, and what does he do? It's Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette, it would be the game-winning home run, a solo shot for Bo. I hope to not see him anymore this season, and maybe we will in the playoffs. But Bichette hits a home run, gives the Blue Jays a 6-5 lead, and then they would bring on closer Jordan Romano. Sanchez would pinch it for Gallo because he was hurt, and Sanchez strikes out looking. Just a really poor at bat by Sanchez, who has really been struggling lately. And then Gleyber Torres would single. Gleyber Torres not struggling lately. Comes up with a big hit there. Then Gio flies out, and Gleyber tags up and goes to second. Really smart heads-up base running by Gleyber there. And so it's runner on second, 2 outs for Tyler Wade. And this I was saying at the time, this could have been Tyler Wade's biggest hit of his career if he did. Unfortunately, he didn't. He flies out. And so that would be it. Toronto wins a game they had to win 6-5 against Garrett Cole. And so that has you going into last game. This really had a major, major playoff feel. This last game. It really did. If the Yankees lost this game, the tone of this episode would have been completely different. It couldn't have been more different. They lost, but luckily they won. And Corey Kluber was on the mound against Robbie Ray. And Robbie Ray is the leading candidate to win the Cy Young Award. And Robbie Ray was cruising until he wasn't. I mean, it was just an amazing sort of turnaround by the Yankees in the 6th inning where Robbie Ray, he had gotten, I think, 13 guys out in a row. I believe it was 13 in a row. Corey Kluber, on the other hand, expectations are low for Corey Kluber, and he would, he did as good as he could have done. It was a pretty typical Corey Kluber type line where he gives up a lot of hits. He wasn't really hit hard. Strikeouts have been hard to come by. You're hoping for a lot of soft contact with Kluber at this stage in his career. He's not going to get strikeouts. And he was left in just a little bit too long. I blame Boone on that one, where Kluber was left in, and also bad defense kind of failed him as well. So Corey Kluber, again, if your expectations were in check, you can acknowledge that this was actually a decent outing for Kluber in a really big game against a tough lineup. And in this one, like I said, Gallo would not start, so it would be Stanton in the outfield. Sanchez would DH as a result, with Voight going on the injured list and Gallo being out. And then also DJ LeMay would come out of this game with a hip injury. Tyler Wade would replace him. The Yankees, it's getting kind of thin in terms of position players. And it sounds like LeMay, it's not guaranteed that he will. I think it's one of those injuries where he's just going to fight through it. But I don't think this first game against the Rays, I don't think he's going to play. Or he might, but it's certainly in question. So the Yankees would actually take the lead in this one, the first time they would in this series, and it would be Aaron Judge with a solo shot. I mean, Aaron Judge, there's not a whole lot more you can say about the guy. He gets them going, and it makes it 1-0. Then in the second, Toronto would tie it. It would be a Bichette single, of course, and then he's still second. And Higashioka's arm is just really subpar. Sanchez has him beat in terms of arm strength. It's not even close. And then with 1 out, Corey Dickerson gets an RBI double, and it makes it 1-1. There would be no scoring until the 5th. And in the 5th, I felt like they were playing with fire, leaving Kluber in this long. And with 1 out, George Springer singles. But really, it was a play that Gio should have made. It hit his glove. He should have made the catch. And then Simeon, on the next batter, hits a ground ball that was close to being a double play. In fact, they called it a double play, but replay showed that he was safe. So then there's runner on first, 2 out, and Vlad Guerrero hits an RBI double. And I said it before he was up. I said Michael King, who was warming up, should have been in for Guerrero. He should have been. It was a bad move by Boone, but no one is going to talk about it now, but it was. And so Guerrero gives the Blue Jays a 2-1 lead. Then Michael King comes in, walks Bichette, and it makes sense to do so. because he's been red hot. And then Teoscar Hernandez grounds out. So it keeps it at 2-1. And then the Yankees would explode in the sixth. With one out, Anthony Rizzo homers. This was his first home run in a while. I think this was his first home run since the Blue Jays series when they were in at Yankee Stadium, actually. And then the next batter, Aaron Judge. He hits a home run to give the Yanks a 3-2 lead. And it wouldn't stop there. Stanton walks, and then Gleyber Torres hits a home run that we haven't really, this was an impressive home run for Gleyber on an 0-2 pitch, hits a 2-run shot, gives the Yankees a 5-2 lead, and that's all for Robbie Ray. So Robbie Ray went from definite AL Cy Young to completely just ruined it for his team. Just like that. That would make it 5-2 Yankees. And in the sixth, it would be Michael King, who would pitch a scoreless sixth inning. So Michael King, has just been, I think he's been as good as I can ever remember him being. And it's been at a really important time. He's a weapon in that bullpen. And then speaking of weapons in the pen, Luis Severino pitches a 1-2-3 seventh inning and looked good doing it. And then in the eighth, Chad Green would give up a leadoff double to Bichette. I mean, just an insane series for Bo Bichette, unbelievable. But then Green would strike out the next three guys. So Chad Green, when he's in a situation where it's not the ninth and the Yankees have a bit of a lead, you don't want him in the real pressure spots, but the ones where the Yankees have a 3-run lead, he can be decent in. And then in the ninth, Brett Gardner hits his 10th homer of the year. And Brett Gardner has been better lately. That gives the Yankees a 6-2 lead. And then Aroldis Chapman comes in, gives up a leadoff single, but then he gets a couple of strikeouts, and then Semien rounds out. And Chapman's been better lately too. So the Yankees win it. They win the series. They are, like I said, up 2 games on Boston and Seattle, and up 3 games on Toronto. So the Tampa series, it's going to be Shane McClanahan versus Nestor Cortez, a battle of lefties. Then game 2 will be Shane Baz, who's a young pitcher for Tampa who's been really good, against Jordan Montgomery. And then game 3 will be Michael Wacha against TBD. We don't know what the situation will be for the Yankees. That'll depend on, I think, hopefully for the Yankees, it means nothing. Hopefully by that time, the Yankees have wrapped up a playoff spot and being home for the wild card game. So this Tampa series will be very interesting. It's in the Yankees' best interest to win early. Nestor Cortez has been, someone who at the very worst is going to keep you in ball games. So I would expect Nestor Cortez to do what he needs to do. McClanahan, will not be easy, but this will be the Yankee Stadium should be pretty fired up for this one. And I'm very excited to see what happens. And hopefully, when we speak about, the recap of this series, like I said, hopefully that game 3 will have no meaning and the Yankees will have sort of taken care of business in the first or second game. But very exciting stuff. And let's just hope the Yankees can keep this moving and that the Yankees can clinch that playoff spot.